I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Right now, even as you rest and breathe, the deeper layers of your mind are already at work, sorting, settling, and quietly preparing you for who you will be tomorrow. Tonight, you'll discover the hidden science of how your subconscious mind rewrites itself while you sleep. And by the end, you'll understand why falling asleep is one of the most powerful things you can do for your mind. Welcome to Sleepy Mind Science. Wherever you are right now, perhaps lying in the quiet dark, or listening as the sounds of the day slowly fade around you, allow yourself to drift into this space of gentle curiosity. We'll journey through 100 science facts about reprogramming your subconscious mind, from the invisible neural pathways forming beneath your awareness, to the nightly cleansing rivers flowing through your sleeping brain, to the extraordinary moment when old patterns dissolve and something new begins to grow. This thoughtful journey through consciousness builds bridges between searching minds. A gentle subscribe, like, or sharing your thoughts creates a pathway for more curious souls to discover this peaceful space, and brings us closer to protecting this sanctuary for every tired mind who finds their way here. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. Your healing journey inspires ours. Let yourself settle completely here. Feel your jaw unclench, your breath deepen naturally. You can let these thoughts drift past without holding them. Sense that soothing heaviness enveloping you, like your consciousness is slowly dimming its brightness. Thoughts dissolving into the peaceful fog of approaching sleep, safe and undisturbed. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're floating where memories rest safely in gentle darkness. Let your mind merge with infinite peace. And now we begin. Your subconscious mind is not a place. It is a process. Neuroscientists describe it as the vast system of mental operations running beneath the level of conscious awareness. It includes everything your brain does without requiring your direct attention. Regulating your heartbeat, managing muscle memory, guiding emotional reactions, and continuously updating your beliefs about the world. Research suggests that somewhere between 90 and 95% of all human behavior is guided by these unconscious processes, meaning that most of what you do, feel, and decide each day is shaped by mental activity you never directly witness. The conscious mind, the part following this voice right now, is only a small fraction of the whole. The rest is happening quietly, in the architecture beneath. The brain processes an extraordinary volume of information simultaneously. Neuroscience offers an estimate that the human brain receives roughly 11 million bits of sensory data every second. From the weight of your body against the bed, to the temperature of the air, to the faint sounds in the room. Your conscious mind can only attend to about 40 of those bits at a time. The rest is handled silently, filtered, categorized, and stored by systems you never directly observe. This vast processing capacity is not a flaw in our design. It is what allows us to function at all. Without it, even the act of breathing with awareness would be overwhelming. Neural pathways are the physical architecture of your beliefs. Every thought you think, every behavior you repeat, and every emotion you associate with an experience strengthens a specific pattern of connections between neurons. Scientists call this synaptic strengthening, the quiet principle that when two neurons activate together, the pathway between them deepens over time. like a trail worn into grass by gentle, repeated footsteps. This is how habits form. This is how assumptions become invisible. And this is also how change becomes possible. Because if pathways can be strengthened through repetition, they can also be reshaped through new experience. The brain you have tonight is not the brain you were born with. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, continues throughout your entire life. For decades, scientists believed the brain was largely fixed after childhood. That view has been overturned. Modern neuroimaging has shown that even in older adults, the brain retains the capacity to form new connections, prune unused ones, and rewire patterns that have been in place for years. The key ingredients for this rewiring appear to be repetition, emotional significance, focused attention, and sleep. All four converge quietly every night you rest. Sleep is not a passive state. It is one of the most neurologically active periods of your entire day. During sleep, your brain cycles through distinct stages, each one performing a different kind of maintenance. In non-REM sleep, particularly the deep, slow-wave stages, the brain consolidates newly learned information, transferring it from short-term storage in the hippocampus to longer-term storage in the cortex. During REM sleep, the stage associated with vivid dreaming, the brain processes emotional memories, integrates new experiences with existing knowledge, and performs a kind of creative reorganization of what it has learned. Far from resting, your sleeping brain is doing some of its most important work. The hippocampus is your brain's temporary filing center. Located deep in the temporal lobe, it acts as the primary intake area for new information, receiving experiences from the day, tagging them with emotional and spatial context, and holding them for later processing. During sleep, the hippocampus replays the day's experiences, sending bursts of neural activity to the cortex in patterns that mirror the original learning events. Scientists have recorded these replay sequences in sleeping humans and animals alike. The brain is not dreaming at random. It is selectively reviewing what it considers worth keeping. Memory consolidation during sleep is more precise than researchers once believed. A study published in 2025 by researchers at the University of Tsukuba found that even a tiny cluster of newly born neurons, as few as 3 cells in the hippocampus, can anchor a memory into long-term storage, provided they fire in precise synchrony with theta waves during REM sleep. This finding suggests that the brain's consolidation process is extraordinarily targeted. It is not a flood of activity, but a carefully timed signal, like a single key turning a lock at exactly the right moment. Theta waves are one of the brain's most important rhythms for learning and memory, measured between 4 and 8 cycles per second. Theta oscillations arise prominently in the hippocampus during REM sleep, as well as during states of relaxed, inward attention, meditation, daydreaming, and the quiet space just before sleep. In this theta state, the brain appears especially receptive to forming new connections and softening old ones. Researchers have found that the strength of theta activity during sleep correlates with how well a person retains new information the following day. The brain, in its most open state, is also its most teachable. Sharp wave ripples are brief electrical bursts generated by the hippocampus during deep, non-REM sleep, lasting only 50 to 150 milliseconds each. These ripples represent one of the most synchronized patterns of activity in the entire brain. 10 to 18% of all hippocampal neurons firing in coordinated sequence. Scientists believe these ripples carry compressed replays of the day's experiences from the hippocampus outward to the cortex, where they are gradually woven into the brain's longer-term memory structure. Each tiny ripple may represent a specific moment being preserved, coded, and filed away. The sleeping brain communicates in layers of rhythm. During non-REM sleep, 3 distinct oscillations work together in a precise hierarchy. Slow cortical oscillations set the tempo. Sleep spindles create windows of receptivity, and sharp wave ripples carry the information itself. These 3 rhythms are nested inside each other, each one modulating the next, like a symphony where the conductor, the orchestra, and the individual musicians all move in careful coordination. This layered rhythmic dialogue between the hippocampus and the cortex, researchers now believe, the primary mechanism by which today's experiences become tomorrow's stable knowledge. The glymphatic system is one of the most significant neuroscience discoveries of recent decades. First described in research published in 2012, it is a network of fluid-filled channels surrounding the brain's blood vessels, a kind of internal plumbing system that runs exclusively through neural tissue. During sleep, cerebrospinal fluid flows through these perivascular channels, sweeping through the brain's interior and washing out metabolic waste products that accumulate during wakefulness. The brain, it turns out, has its own dedicated clearing system, one that only begins its deepest work after you close your eyes. Among the waste products cleared during sleep are proteins associated with neurodegenerative disease, beta amyloid and tau, molecules whose abnormal accumulation is linked to Alzheimer's disease, are among the substances that this clearing process removes from brain tissue. A landmark human study published in early 2026 in Nature Communications found that normal sleep measurably increases the presence of these proteins in the bloodstream. The proteins found in the bloodstream had been cleared from the brain, exported, not produced. Sleep was doing its job. When sleep is disrupted, this clearance slows, and the proteins remain. The brain that sleeps well is a brain that is quietly washing itself clean, night after night. Research in animal models has shown that the interstitial space between brain cells, the channels through which cerebrospinal fluid flows, appears to expand by approximately 60% during sleep. This expansion creates wider passages for fluid to move through, significantly increasing the rate of waste removal. Human imaging studies, including a landmark 2024 study at Oregon Health and Science University, have since confirmed the existence of these glymphatic pathways in people, and researchers believe a similar dynamic expansion occurs in the human brain during rest. The brain, it seems, genuinely opens up during sleep. It makes room for what it needs to release. A 2025 study, published in the journal Cell, identified a previously unknown driver of glymphatic clearance during sleep. Researchers found that oscillating waves of norepinephrine, a neurotransmitter typically associated with alertness, are released in slow, rhythmic pulses during non-REM sleep. These pulses cause subtle contractions and expansions in blood vessel diameter, creating a gentle pumping action that drives cerebrospinal fluid through the brain's channels, the same chemical that moves through the brain during stress, released in tiny, rhythmic amounts during deep sleep, becomes a mechanism for cleansing. Biology, as always, is more elegant than it appears. The default mode network, often called the DMN, is a constellation of brain regions that becomes most active when you are not focused on any specific external task. It includes the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, the precuneus, and portions of the hippocampus and temporal lobe. When you daydream, reflect on the past, imagine the future, or simply let your mind wander, the default mode network is humming with activity. Neuroscientists now describe it as the brain's baseline state, its resting posture, and increasingly, as the neural substrate of your sense of self. The subconscious mind, in many ways, lives here. Research published in 2024 found that regular, consistent sleep patterns strengthen the structural connectivity of the default mode network. A study involving young adults measured the relationship between sleep regularity, how consistent the timing of sleep and waking was across 7 days, and the functional organization of the DMN, as measured by resting state, fMRI. Those with more regular sleep patterns showed greater network connectivity, particularly in regions associated with self-referential processing and memory integration. The architecture of the self, it appears, is partly maintained by the rhythm of your rest. Habits live in the brain as physical structures. When a behavior is repeated consistently, the neural circuit underlying it becomes progressively more efficient. The insulating sheath around the axon grows thicker, impulses travel faster, and less conscious effort is required to activate the pattern. Over time, frequently used circuits become something neuroscientists call an engram, a physical trace of experience embedded in the tissue of the brain itself. These engrams are not metaphors. They are real, measurable changes in neural architecture. When you say that something is deeply ingrained, you are describing a biological reality. Sleep spindles are brief bursts of rhythmic neural activity that appear on an EEG as sudden waves between 12 and 16 cycles per second. They occur during stage 2 of non-REM sleep and last only half a second to 2 seconds each. Despite their brevity, they are considered one of the most meaningful markers of sleep quality and of learning. Studies have shown that the number of sleep spindles a person generates in a night correlates with how well they will remember newly learned material the following morning. Sleep spindles appear to create brief windows of neural plasticity, moments when the brain's capacity for change is temporarily heightened. Slow cortical oscillations, large, sweeping waves of electrical activity that travel across the surface of the sleeping brain, coordinate the timing of both sleep spindles and sharp wave ripples. These slow oscillations, which occur roughly once every second during deep non-REM sleep, are initiated in the prefrontal cortex and travel backward across the brain in a wave. When the wave's crest arrives at a given region, that region becomes briefly receptive to incoming information. The hippocampus, waiting for this window, releases its sharp wave ripples in synchrony. The slow oscillation is the conductor, setting the beat for the entire consolidation orchestra. The connection between sleep and neuroplasticity operates on a molecular level. During the waking hours of learning, a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, is released at active synapses. BDNF promotes the growth of new neural connections and strengthens existing ones. Sleep appears to regulate the timing and distribution of this protein, allowing the brain to reinforce the connections formed during the day without becoming overwhelmed by indiscriminate growth. Learning without adequate sleep is, at the cellular level, like planting seeds without watering them. Emotional memories are processed differently during sleep than neutral ones. Research published in 2025 by scientists at Harvard Medical School's Center for Sleep and Cognition found that both slow-wave sleep and REM sleep contribute to the consolidation of emotionally charged memories, but through different mechanisms. Slow-wave sleep appears to preserve the factual content of an emotional experience, while REM sleep softens the emotional intensity attached to it. Sleep, in this sense, does not merely store memories, it edits them, gently reducing the charge of difficult experiences while preserving their meaning. This is one reason why things often look different in the morning. The subconscious mind communicates through imagery, feeling, and pattern, not through language. When researchers study implicit memory, emotional conditioning, and procedural learning, they find a system that operates through association and resonance rather than words. This is why affirmations alone, spoken as abstract sentences, often fail to reach subconscious patterns. The brain's deeper learning systems respond more readily to vivid mental imagery, to emotion, to sensory experience, and to repetition embedded in context. To speak to the subconscious, you must use its language, the language of felt experience. The hypnagogic state, the threshold between wakefulness and sleep, is a neurologically distinct condition. As the brain begins to disengage from waking awareness, it passes through a brief zone where theta waves begin to dominate, but conscious control has not yet dissolved. The critical, analytical regions of the prefrontal cortex quiet down. The default mode network softens its self-referential activity. In this state, the boundaries between suggestion and experience, between imagination and perception, become permeable. Many researchers regard this as a window of heightened receptivity, a natural threshold where deeply held patterns may become more accessible and more malleable. The prefrontal cortex is often called the seat of conscious, rational thought. It governs planning, decision-making, impulse control, and the critical evaluation of incoming information. When it is highly active, during focused wakefulness, stress, or analytical thinking, it acts as a filter, vetting new information against existing beliefs. As you move toward sleep, prefrontal activity diminishes, the filtering loosens, experiences, emotions, and patterns can enter the brain's deeper processing systems more directly. This is one of the reasons relaxation is not merely pleasant. It is, in a neurological sense, necessary for certain kinds of learning and change. The brain consolidates not just specific memories during sleep, but broader patterns of understanding. A process called schema consolidation integrates new information with existing knowledge frameworks. The mental models we carry about how the world works, who we are, and what is possible. When a new experience challenges an existing schema, the brain needs time and sleep to reconcile the difference. During sleep, the hippocampus and the neocortex negotiate. New information is compared, filtered, and gradually woven into the larger pattern. This is how deep change happens, not through a single dramatic moment, but through countless quiet integrations, one night at a time. Let's pause here and notice your body. As you breathe out slowly, appreciate each tiny cell inside, trillions of organisms working in silence, heart beating, lungs breathing, brain thinking, all without your command. Neurons that fired together today are beginning to wire together tonight. In the gentle dark behind your eyes, notice the subtle weight of your limbs, the warmth spreading through your shoulders, the quiet rhythm of your own breath. You are a complete and self-repairing system, diverse, self-balancing, carrying the architecture of everything you have ever learned. Now we continue. Cortisol, the hormone most associated with stress, has a well-documented effect on memory and neural plasticity. Elevated cortisol levels impair the hippocampus's ability to consolidate new memories and reduce the brain's capacity to form new neural connections. Chronic stress, which maintains cortisol at elevated levels, has been shown to affect the hippocampus's volume over time. Sleep, by contrast, is one of the most reliable regulators of cortisol. During adequate, uninterrupted sleep, cortisol levels drop to their lowest point of the day, allowing the hippocampus to repair, integrate, and grow. Rest is not weakness. It is repair. Mindfulness meditation has been shown to measurably alter subconscious processing patterns. Neuroimaging studies have found that regular mindfulness practice reduces the habitual reactivity of the amygdala, the brain's primary threat detection center, and strengthens its connections to the prefrontal cortex. This means that over time, the brain's first automatic response to perceived challenges becomes more modulated. The old reflex, shaped by years of subconscious conditioning, gradually softens. What was once an instant, unconscious reaction becomes something the brain can briefly pause and examine. The space between stimulus and response, once invisible, begins to widen. Visualization activates the brain in ways that closely resemble actual experience. When a person vividly imagines performing an action, many of the same motor and sensory neural circuits activate as they would during the real performance. Athletes, musicians, and surgeons have long used mental rehearsal as a training tool, and the neurological basis is now well understood. Repeated vivid mental imagery of a desired state, particularly when accompanied by genuine emotional engagement, strengthens the neural circuits associated with that state. The brain, in a very real sense, does not always distinguish between a deeply felt imagining and a lived experience. The amygdala plays a central role in encoding emotionally significant memories. When an experience carries strong emotional weight, whether joy, grief, or deep surprise, the amygdala signals the hippocampus to strengthen the encoding of that memory. This is why emotionally intense experiences tend to be remembered with greater clarity and persistence than neutral ones. It is also why early life experiences, many of which carry strong emotional charge, leave such enduring traces in the subconscious. The brain gives priority filing status to anything the emotional system marks as significant. Sleep deprivation affects the brain's capacity for emotional regulation. Studies have consistently found that sleep-deprived individuals show greater amygdala reactivity, stronger and faster emotional responses than well-rested individuals. Imaging studies reveal that sleep deprivation reduces the connectivity between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, loosening the regulatory connection that keeps emotional reactions proportionate. Without adequate sleep, the subconscious systems that generate emotional responses operate with less oversight. The world can feel louder, more pressing, more difficult to hold. Not because it has changed, but because the resting brain has not had time to recalibrate. The brain actively prunes neural connections during sleep, while consolidation strengthens important pathways. A parallel process called synaptic downscaling reduces the strength of less used connections. This pruning is not loss, it is refinement. A brain that retained every connection made during a day of learning would quickly become saturated, unable to distinguish signal from noise. Sleep allows the brain to decide which connections deserve strengthening and which can be quietly released. This nightly editing is part of what makes the sleeping brain such a capable instrument of change. It is not merely storing what you learned, it is distilling it. Targeted memory reactivation is a technique that uses external cues during sleep to strengthen specific memories. In research settings, participants learn material associated with a particular sound or scent. Later, during slow-wave sleep, the cue is reintroduced, and the associated memory is preferentially strengthened during consolidation. An 18% improvement in knowledge retention was observed in one such study, published by NIH-affiliated researchers. When classical music used during learning was replayed during slow-wave sleep, the brain, while asleep, is still listening. It is still learning. It is still choosing what to keep. The language of the subconscious is embodied. Somatic experiences, the felt sensations of the body, are processed by the brain's deeper, older structures, including the insula and the brainstem, before they ever reach the cortex. This means that bodily states, tension, relaxation, openness, contraction, influence subconscious processing directly, below the level of rational thought. When you relax your body, you are not merely making yourself comfortable, you are changing the input signals to the brain's emotional and memory systems. You are creating different conditions for what your subconscious receives and what it encodes. The body and the subconscious mind communicate in both directions. Not only does mental state shape physical sensation shapes mental state with equal power. Research in the field of embodied cognition has shown that subtle postural changes, breathing patterns, and muscle tension levels can measurably influence emotional processing, cognitive flexibility, and even the accessibility of specific memories. The posture of rest, lying down, muscles soft, breathing slow, sends signals that prepare the brain's deeper systems for integration. This is part of why sleep, and the relaxed state approaching sleep, has such a unique effect on the subconscious. Cognitive behavioral therapy, often called CBT, works at least in part by systematically changing subconscious patterns through conscious, repeated practice. By identifying habitual thought patterns and consistently introducing alternative responses, CBT creates new neural pathways, ones that eventually become more automatic than the patterns they replaced. Brain imaging studies before and after CBT treatment have shown measurable changes in prefrontal cortex activity and reduced amygdala reactivity. The therapy does not simply teach new ideas. Over time, it physically rewires the neural architecture underlying emotional response. Dreams are not random noise. Current neuroscience increasingly suggests that REM sleep dreams serve a function in integrating recent experience with longer-term memory and emotional processing. The default mode network, the brain's self-referential system, is highly active during REM sleep. Researchers have proposed that dreams represent a kind of simulation, a space where the brain rehearses variations on experience, tests possible futures, and recombines elements from different parts of memory in novel ways. The dreaming mind is not resting. It is exploring. Implicit learning, the kind of learning that occurs without conscious awareness, takes place continuously during wakefulness and is consolidated during sleep. When you navigate a familiar city, develop a taste in music, or sense the emotional atmosphere of a room, you are drawing on knowledge that was absorbed implicitly through exposure and pattern recognition rather than deliberate study. Much of what shapes the subconscious is this implicit layer, the accumulated pattern recognition of a lifetime, most of which was never consciously reviewed or chosen. Sleep does not distinguish between what was learned deliberately and what was absorbed without noticing. It consolidates all of it. Research from University College London found that, on average, consistent daily practice over roughly 66 days is associated with the point where a new behavior begins to feel automatic. Though the range across individuals is wide, from as few as 18 days to as many as 254, the deeper finding is simpler and more reassuring than any single number. The brain changes through patient, consistent return, not by a deadline, but by direction. What you consistently come back to, night after night, gradually becomes part of the architecture of who you are. The cerebellum, long associated primarily with motor coordination, plays a larger role in subconscious processing than once understood. Cerebellar circuits are involved in the timing and automation of both physical and cognitive routines. When a behavior becomes automatic, when it moves from conscious effort to unconscious habit, the cerebellar circuits involved in that behavior become more strongly engaged. This shift from cortical control to cerebellar automation is part of what makes deeply practiced behaviors feel effortless. Sleep appears to support this transfer, helping newly practiced skills settle into their quieter, more efficient home. The sleeping brain is not merely passive to its own contents. It is selective. Neuroscience research suggests that the brain prioritizes the consolidation of emotionally significant, personally relevant, or goal-related information over neutral material. Information the brain has tagged as meaningful because it was attended to with care, because it carried emotional weight, or because it was encountered repeatedly, is more likely to be woven into long-term memory and subconscious processing patterns. What you bring to sleep with genuine attention and feeling is more likely to stay. This is not mysticism. It is the biology of significance. You're still here, still listening, still drifting with us through these quiet corridors of the mind. Take a slow breath. Notice how your body feels a little softer now, a little heavier, as if something you were holding has gently set itself down. We're exploring consciousness together. You and I, and everyone listening in the quiet dark. Just the gentle current of curiosity, carrying us forward. Let's continue. During the hypnagogic state, those few minutes between wakefulness and sleep, the brain's critical filtering systems quiet, and the deeper subconscious layers become more accessible. The prefrontal cortex, which normally evaluates and edits incoming information against existing beliefs, reduces its activity as sleep approaches. In this window, the brain's older, pattern-based systems are more receptive to new input. Researchers studying this threshold state have found that thoughts, images, and sensations experienced here tend to be processed more directly by the emotional and memory systems than those experienced during ordinary wakefulness. Your brain generates a different quality of awareness during each stage of sleep. Stage 1, the lightest stage, is marked by alpha and theta waves, a relaxed drifting where awareness is reduced but not gone. Stage 2 brings sleep spindles and K complexes, and a deeper quieting of the outside world. Stages 3 and 4, slow wave sleep, are the deepest, most restorative stages, characterized by large, slow delta waves rolling across the brain. Then, cycling back, REM sleep brings a burst of activity, almost indistinguishable from waking on an EEG, but with the body held in voluntary stillness, allowing the mind to travel while the limbs rest. The basal ganglia are a group of structures deep in the brain that play a central role in habit formation and the execution of automatic behaviors. When a new behavior is learned, it begins under conscious cortical control. Effortful, deliberate, requiring attention. As the behavior is repeated, the basal ganglia progressively take over its execution, allowing it to run automatically while conscious attention turns elsewhere. This is the neural mechanism by which habits become invisible. The subconscious is not an abstract force. It is, in significant part, the basal ganglia running well-practiced programs on behalf of the conscious mind. Positive emotional states enhance neuroplasticity. Research has found that the release of dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward and motivation, strengthens the encoding of the experiences that preceded it. When something feels meaningful or satisfying, the brain marks it for deeper consolidation. This is one of the biological reasons why learning in a relaxed, positively engaged state tends to produce stronger memory traces than learning under pressure. The brain is not an impartial recorder. It prioritizes what feels rewarding. And sleep. Calm, comfortable, unhurried sleep is one of the most neurologically restorative states the body knows. Interoception, the brain's awareness of its own internal bodily states, is directly connected to emotional regulation and subconscious processing. The insula, a brain structure tucked within the lateral fissure, processes signals from the body, heartbeat, breath, gut sensation, temperature, and integrates them into the overall feeling state of consciousness. Research has shown that people with greater interoceptive awareness, a finer sensitivity to their own bodily signals, tend to have better emotional regulation and more stable access to implicit knowledge. Listening to the body, even in its most subtle signals, is a form of subconscious communication. The brain's default mode network becomes a kind of library during sleep. During REM sleep, regions of the DMN, particularly those involved in memory, self-referential thought, and imaginative projection, show patterns of activity that researchers describe as memory replay and integration. The brain is cross-referencing, connecting today's experiences with years of prior knowledge, finding resonances and patterns across time. What emerges from this nightly session is not simply stronger memory for individual events, but a deeper, more integrated understanding. New insights sometimes arriving in the moments between sleep and waking, as if delivered from somewhere quietly below. Belief change is fundamentally a neural process. What we call a belief is, at the level of the brain, a well-established pattern of neural connections, one that has been activated so consistently that it has become the brain's default response to a given category of experience. Changing a belief means, in neurological terms, creating a new pathway that is stronger, more frequently activated than the old one, until the old pattern fades into disuse. This process cannot be hurried beyond the brain's own pace, but it can be supported consistently through the quality of repetition, the depth of emotional engagement, and the reliability of sleep. One of the more intriguing discoveries about REM sleep involves what is almost entirely absent during it: norepinephrine, the neurotransmitter that moves through the brain during moments of stress and alertness, drops to near zero levels during REM sleep. Researchers believe this creates an unusual window. The brain can reactivate the neural circuits of a difficult memory, replaying its shape and sequence without the chemical signature of distress accompanying it. The memory is reviewed, but without the alarm. Over many nights, something like a natural, quiet resolution becomes possible. The language centers of the brain, primarily located in the left hemisphere, are among the later regions to settle into sleep. In the early stages of drifting toward unconsciousness, internal verbal monologue is often one of the last cognitive activities to quiet. This is why the last thoughts before sleep are so often narrative in character, running commentary, remembered conversations, anticipated ones. As sleep deepens, this verbal activity fades, and the brain shifts into a more imagistic, associative mode of processing. The mind stops narrating and begins composing. Something older and quieter takes over. Halfway through our journey, a pattern has emerged. The subconscious mind is not a vault holding fixed contents. It is a living, responsive system, shaped by every experience you have, every night you sleep, every belief you consistently act on. And sleep, far from being a simple pause in consciousness, is one of the primary mechanisms through which the subconscious is continuously maintained, refined, and, given the right conditions, gently transformed. What you understand at this midpoint is this: you are not passive to your own mind. Every night you sleep, the conversation continues. Let each breath guide you to realize that time is yours, a separate stream that only you are living. While the vast machinery of your brain continues its silent work, this moment you're breathing, listening, is unique. The neurons now consolidating today's learning will not fire in exactly this pattern again. The memory being woven into your cortex right now will carry something of tonight's quiet into tomorrow. Cherish the present moment, knowing that right now, your mind is doing exactly what it needs to do, and we continue drifting. Every night of sleep slightly rewrites the brain, not dramatically, not all at once, but incrementally, consistently, in the direction of whatever you have been repeatedly experiencing, thinking, and feeling. This is not a metaphor. The molecular and structural changes that occur during sleep, the pruning of weak connections, the strengthening of active ones, the reorganization of memory networks, accumulate over weeks, months, and years into what we experience as character, habit, and identity. You are, in a very real sense, a product of your sleep. The brain's capacity for change does not diminish with age as dramatically as once believed. While certain forms of plasticity are more pronounced in early childhood, neuroimaging studies have documented meaningful structural and functional changes in adult and elderly brains in response to new experience, meditation practice, and cognitive training. The underlying mechanisms, neuroplasticity, synaptic remodeling, neurogenesis in specific regions, remain active throughout life. The conversation between experience and neural architecture continues, quietly. For as long as the brain is living, attention is the gateway to the subconscious. What receives consistent, focused attention is more deeply encoded, more strongly consolidated, and more likely to shape subconscious processing. The brain's attentional systems act as spotlights. They illuminate certain signals and allow others to dim. What you attend to with regularity becomes, over time, what your brain treats as real and relevant. Choosing where to place attention, even imperfectly, even gradually, is one of the most accessible forms of self-directed change available to a human mind. The quality of sleep affects how effectively the brain can form new neural pathways the following day. Sleep before learning prepares the hippocampus, refreshing its capacity to receive and encode new information. Studies have shown that insufficient sleep measurably reduces hippocampal activity during subsequent learning tasks. A well-slept brain brings a readied substrate to every new experience. What you learn tomorrow depends, in part, on how you sleep tonight. The brain's glymphatic system is now understood to be closely linked to the health of its neural plasticity systems. Research has shown that the accumulation of metabolic waste products, which glymphatic clearance removes during sleep, impairs synaptic function and reduces the brain's responsiveness to learning. Conversely, efficient glymphatic clearance during sleep appears to maintain the very cellular conditions that allow neuroplasticity to occur. The cleaning of the brain and the rewiring of the brain are not separate processes. They are two aspects of the same nightly restoration. Slow-wave sleep is particularly important for the consolidation of procedural memories, the kind of knowledge that lives in the body. Learning to type, to play a chord, to catch a ball. These skills are encoded in procedural memory systems and consolidated primarily during the deepest stages of non-REM sleep. This is why practice before sleep tends to support skill development. The hours of slow-wave sleep that follow are not waiting time. They are integration time, conducted in the brain's own quiet interior. The insula, the brain region that processes internal bodily awareness, is more active during REM sleep than during most waking states. This suggests that REM sleep may involve a heightened integration of bodily felt experience with the emotional and memory systems, the body's sensory signals, which carry much of the subconscious's implicit knowledge, appear to receive particular processing during dreams. This may be one reason why insights involving felt understanding can arrive through the imagery and sensation of dreaming, rather than through deliberate waking reflection. Compassion and self-kindness have measurable effects on neural stress pathways. Research has found that practices involving self-compassion reduce activity in the brain's threat detection circuitry and shift the neural emphasis towards systems associated with affiliative emotion and care. For the subconscious mind, whose patterns were often formed under conditions of stress, this shift in neural tone is not trivial. The emotional context in which new experiences occur shapes how they are encoded. A mind learning in an atmosphere of gentleness encodes differently than one learning under pressure. Gratitude practice has been associated with changes in the brain's reward circuitry and its emotional regulation systems. When individuals regularly reflect on what they value and appreciate, activity in the medial prefrontal cortex increases, and the emotional tone associated with recalled experiences shifts. This is not simply a pleasant habit. It is, neurologically, a form of practice that gradually biases the brain's pattern recognition systems toward positive association. The subconscious operates largely through pattern and tone. What you consistently bring into awareness with warmth, you are quietly, persistently, teaching the brain to recognize as home. The transition into sleep is preceded by a measurable shift in brainwave activity. As waking beta waves slow into the alpha range, between 8 and 12 cycles per second, the mind enters a state of relaxed but unfocused awareness. As this shifts further into theta, 4 to 8 cycles per second, the hypnagogic threshold is reached. In this state, the analytical mind quiets, the emotional systems soften, and the brain becomes, for a brief window, especially receptive to whatever it is experiencing. Many traditions around the world have noted this threshold's quality of openness. Neuroscience is now beginning to provide the mechanism behind what those traditions described. The cerebral cortex performs a kind of overnight filing, categorizing the day's experiences according to their emotional significance, novelty, and relevance to existing knowledge. Experiences that are emotionally meaningful or personally relevant are given priority in this process. Experiences that were attended to carefully, where real engagement occurred, are more likely to enter the long-term archive. This is why the quality of your waking hours, how present you were, how engaged, how emotionally honest, influences what your sleeping brain considers worth preserving. Research on early experience and the nervous system has revealed how deeply subconscious patterns can be rooted in childhood. Events that occur before the age of verbal memory leave measurable traces in the brain's emotional and attachment systems. These traces shape how the nervous system responds to stress, intimacy, and uncertainty for years. This is not a counsel of determinism. It is a description of where the work of change is sometimes located, in the body's implicit memory, in the emotional undercurrents that run beneath the surface of conscious thought. Neurogenesis, the generation of new neurons, continues in at least one region of the adult brain, the hippocampal dentate gyrus. This area is closely involved in the brain's ability to distinguish between similar experiences and treat them as distinct. New neurons born in this region integrate into existing circuits over a period of weeks, gradually acquiring the capacity to participate in memory encoding and emotional processing. Research has linked adequate sleep to the healthy maturation of these new neurons. The sleeping brain is not merely maintaining what it has, in small, quiet ways. It is also growing new capacity. What the subconscious believes about rest itself can influence the quality of sleep. Studies have found that individuals who hold strongly negative expectations about their sleep show increased physiological arousal and disrupted sleep compared to those with more flexible beliefs. The relationship with sleep can become, itself, a subconscious pattern, one that activates the stress response at precisely the moment when calm is most needed. Releasing pressure around sleep is not only emotionally kind, it is neurologically helpful. Midway through the journey of our 100 facts, an understanding is settling. The subconscious mind and sleep are not separate topics. They are two facets of the same continuous process of becoming. Sleep is when the subconscious performs its deepest maintenance. It is when memories are selected, when patterns are refined, when the accumulated experience of the day is quietly woven into the fabric of who you are. To tend to sleep is to tend to the subconscious. And to tend to the subconscious is, in the most fundamental way, to tend to yourself. The default mode network carries the brain's sense of personal narrative, the ongoing story of who you are, where you have been, and who you might become. Disruptions to DMN function have been associated with conditions involving fragmented self-experience. Conversely, practices that strengthen and regulate DMN activity, regular sleep, meditation, coherent personal reflection, appear to support the integration and stability of the sense of self. You are, in part, the story your brain tells while it rests. The body's circadian rhythm, the roughly 24-hour internal clock, governs not only the timing of sleep and waking, but also the cycling of cortisol, the regulation of body temperature, and the sensitivity of the brain's learning systems to new input. Learning that occurs in alignment with circadian rhythms tends to be more effectively retained. Sleep at consistent times amplifies this alignment. The body is not indifferent to when rest occurs. It has preferred hours, and honoring them is a form of cooperation with the brain's own biology. The hippocampus and the amygdala are anatomically adjacent in the brain's medial temporal lobe, and they communicate extensively. This proximity reflects the deep biological link between memory and emotion. The fact that what we remember most vividly is what we felt most strongly. But this also means that the cultivation of emotional regulation, the quieting of excessive reactivity, can have direct beneficial effects on how memories are encoded and retrieved. A calmer emotional system encodes more clearly. It retrieves with less distortion. The heart of memory, it turns out, is connected to the heart of feeling. Across cultures and across history, the period of falling asleep has been recognized as a time of particular psychological significance. From ancient Egyptian temples, where healing dreams were sought, to indigenous traditions of dream incubation across multiple continents, human beings have consistently intuited that the threshold of sleep carries unusual potential. Neuroscience is now beginning to understand why. The hypnagogic state, with its quieted prefrontal filtering and its activated default mode network, is a genuinely distinct form of consciousness, one that the brain enters naturally. every single night. Sleep has a restorative effect on the brain's cellular environment. During deep, non-REM sleep, glial cells, the brain's support and maintenance cells, which also drive the glymphatic system, are more active, tending to cellular repair and regulating the local chemical environment. A brain that consistently receives adequate sleep carries a lower background level of neural inflammation. A brain that is chronically under-rested carries more. And this sustained state impairs both cognitive function and emotional regulation over time. The subconscious mind holds not only personal memories and beliefs, but procedural and emotional patterns that were never explicitly taught. Much of what shapes behavior was absorbed from the environment, through observation, through tone of voice, through the emotional atmospheres of childhood. These absorbed patterns operate below awareness, influencing responses that feel like personality rather than learned behavior. The recognition that such patterns exist and that they are encoded in modifiable neural tissue is itself a form of freedom. What was encoded can, with time and care, be encoded differently. Self-compassion and self-acceptance appear to support the outcomes of deliberate attempts at subconscious change. Research comparing participants who approached habit change with self-criticism versus those who approached it with kindness found that the latter group showed greater resilience after setbacks and greater long-term consistency with new patterns. The brain's stress response, when chronically activated by self-judgment, impairs the very hippocampal and prefrontal functions that support change. Kindness toward yourself is not a soft sentiment. It is a condition that makes the biology of change more possible. The sleeping brain is also a creative brain. Research has documented that sleep, particularly REM sleep, enhances the brain's capacity for novel association, the ability to connect ideas and experiences from disparate domains in unexpected ways. Problem-solving performance on tasks requiring insight is measurably improved after sleep compared to equivalent periods of wakefulness. The subconscious, unconstrained by the focused, linear thinking of the prefrontal cortex, explores the space of possible connections freely. Many people report waking with solutions they did not have before closing their eyes. The act of intentional relaxation before sleep creates measurable physiological changes that support both sleep quality and neural consolidation. Practices such as slow, deep breathing activate the parasympathetic nervous system, reducing heart rate, lowering blood pressure, and quieting the stress response. This parasympathetic state is associated with improved glymphatic flow, stronger sleep spindle generation, and more organized memory consolidation. What this means is that the quality of your transition into sleep shapes the quality of the consolidation that follows. How you arrive at the shore of sleep matters. By this point in our journey, the answer to the question embedded in this video's title has been forming, fact by fact. In the quiet spaces between thoughts, can the subconscious mind be reprogrammed? The evidence says yes. Not through any single technique or dramatic intervention, but through the patient, consistent interaction of attention, emotion, repetition, and sleep. Every night, the brain conducts its own quiet revision of who you are. Every morning, you wake to a mind that has been gently, incrementally updated. This is not a promise. It is a biological process, and it is happening, even now. as the darkness behind your eyes grows softer. You might be feeling tired now. That's perfectly fine. Breathe slowly. Feel the cycles. Your neurons fire and rest. Your breath moves in and out. Your heart beats its ancient rhythm, a cycle within cycles, reaching back to the first heartbeat you ever had. You are part of that eternal movement. You don't need to hold on to anything tonight. Let everything unfold in its own order, like the brain's own oscillations. Unhurried, unresisting, simply continuing. We're almost there now. Sleep is the most natural form of neural reset the brain possesses. After a night of adequate, uninterrupted sleep, measures of hippocampal learning capacity, prefrontal function, and emotional regulation all show improvement. The brain that wakes from deep sleep has, in a genuine neurological sense, been refreshed. Old metabolic waste cleared. Emotional charge softened. New connections stabilized. What felt heavy yesterday may feel lighter today. This is not imagination. It is physiology. The brain continues to process sound during light sleep. Certain auditory signals, particularly those with personal significance, can still activate the brain's attention systems even during the earliest stages of sleep. This is one reason why the emotional quality of sound in the sleeping environment matters. Calm, continuous, soft sounds support the drift into deeper rest. The sleeping brain is not closed. It is simply quieter and more selective. Gratitude, recalled gently as sleep approaches, creates a different neural tone for the sleeping brain to enter. Positive emotional states at the time of sleep onset are associated with more stable sleep architecture and more regulated sleep cycling through the night. The emotional residue of the day does not disappear when you close your eyes. It shapes the brain's first hours of sleep. What you bring into the darkness matters. Softness calls to softness. The body's posture during sleep may influence the efficiency of glymphatic clearance. Research in animal models, and with growing relevance to human studies, has suggested that lateral sleeping, lying on one's side, may support the flow of cerebrospinal fluid through the brain's channels compared to other positions. The angle of rest and the relationship between brain structure and gravity appear to matter for how efficiently the night's clearing proceeds. The position of rest is not entirely arbitrary. New neural pathways require repetition to stabilize. A pathway formed once from a single experience is fragile, easily overwritten by the next strong experience. But a pathway reinforced across multiple days and nights, one that is consistently activated and consolidated during sleep, becomes progressively more stable, more automatic, more deeply woven into the brain's architecture. Change that lasts is change that returns, again and again, and is welcomed into sleep, night after night. The sleeping brain does not simply replay memories. It gently rewrites them. Each time a memory is consolidated, it is reintegrated with new context, new emotional associations, new understanding. This is why the way you remember an event changes over time. Memory is not a recording. It is a living reconstruction, updated with each consolidation cycle. What this means for the subconscious is quietly reassuring. Even old patterns, recalled in a new emotional context, are subject to gentle revision. The story is never entirely finished. Breath is a direct pathway to the autonomic nervous system. Long, slow exhalations activate the vagus nerve, shifting the body from sympathetic activation toward parasympathetic calm. This shift is measurable in heart rate variability and is felt immediately as a softening in the chest and a quieting in the mind. The breath is one of the very few bodily functions that is both automatic and voluntarily controllable. This makes it a bridge between the conscious and the subconscious, a tool for speaking directly to the brain's deeper regulatory systems. The brain's sleep architecture changes across the night. Early sleep cycles contain more slow-wave sleep. Later cycles contain more REM sleep. This means the first few hours are primarily consolidation sleep, strengthening the day's learning. The later hours are primarily REM sleep, processing emotional experience, integrating knowledge, supporting creative connection, cutting sleep short, particularly in the early morning hours, disproportionately reduces REM sleep. The emotional and integrative work of the night is concentrated in the hours most easily lost. The neural changes associated with long-term meditation practice are documented and measurable. Regular meditators show increased gray matter density in the insula, the prefrontal cortex, and portions of the default mode network. They show reduced reactivity in the amygdala at baseline and stronger connections between the amygdala and the regulatory prefrontal systems. These changes reflect a brain that has been literally reshaped by repeated experience of calm, present awareness. The subconscious learns not only from what happens to us, but from the quality of attention we bring to our own inner experience. Sleep and learning form a feedback loop that operates across your entire life. Better sleep supports better neural consolidation, which supports deeper learning. Deeper learning, integrated with rest, supports more coherent and flexible understanding. More coherent understanding supports better emotional regulation and calmer decisions. Calmer decisions reduce stress and support better sleep. The loop is continuous, and it turns in both directions. Every night you sleep well is an investment that carries forward into every morning that follows. The subconscious is not a problem to be solved. It is a system to be understood, worked with, and gently educated over time. The brain's depth, its capacity to run most of life's navigation automatically, beneath awareness, is not a limitation. It is a gift. Without it, the simplest daily tasks would be overwhelming. The work is not to overcome the subconscious, but to become its patient collaborator, using attention, emotion, repetition, and rest to gradually, consistently, align its patterns with the life you are choosing to grow into. Each night of sleep is a quiet act of self-maintenance. While you are absent from the world, your brain is washing itself, reorganizing itself, strengthening what is useful, releasing what is not, and preparing itself for another day of experience. This is not passive. It is the most fundamental form of care the brain provides for itself, and it asks only one thing in return: that you let it happen, that you allow the rest the body already knows how to take. If you give it the permission of your stillness. Memory is not stored in single neurons or single locations. It is distributed across networks. Patterns of activation spread through many regions, working in coordinated ensemble. When a memory is retrieved, the entire network reactivates. And through that reactivation, every linked association, every emotional tone, every sensory fragment connected to that experience becomes available simultaneously. This is why memory is so richly contextual, and why familiar sounds or scents can open entire landscapes of the past. You are not a filing cabinet. You are a resonant system. The glymphatic system and sleep quality are linked in a relationship with brain health that extends across decades. A study from the University of Cambridge, published in late 2025, found that markers of impaired cerebrospinal fluid movement predicted elevated risk of dementia among more than 40,000 adults. Conversely, practices that support sleep quality appear to support glymphatic function and reduce the accumulation of proteins associated with neurodegeneration. The brain's clearing system and its long-term health are not separate concerns. They are, in the most practical sense, the same concern. The science of subconscious change is, in many ways, the science of consistent sleep. Every approach that supports lasting neural change, repetition, emotional engagement, positive association, visualization, calm practice, depends on sleep to consolidate its effects. Without the sleeping brain's nightly work, the day's learning remains provisional and fragile. Sleep is not one part of the process of change. It is the process that gives all other parts their permanence. The brain is most receptive to self-directed input in the calm, relaxed state that precedes sleep, not in the urgency of a busy day, and not in the depths of unconscious sleep, but here, in the gentle drift between. In this threshold, the default mode network is active but quiet. The prefrontal filter is soft, and the emotional systems are accessible without being flooded. Whatever you bring into this space with gentleness and intention is closer to the deeper layers of the mind than almost anything experienced during the waking day. Even a single night of improved sleep shows measurable benefits to mood, cognitive flexibility, and emotional regulation. The brain is not waiting for a long-term program to begin its restoration. Each night is complete in itself. Each night of adequate sleep is a full cycle of maintenance, consolidation, and preparation. You do not need to have slept perfectly for years to benefit from the sleep you take tonight. Tonight is enough. The relationship between the conscious and subconscious mind is not one of opposition. The subconscious is not running hidden programs against your interests. It is running the most efficient version of the programs it has learned, based on the experiences you have had. Where those programs no longer serve, where old patterns produce outcomes you have outgrown. The path is not force, but patient, consistent, gentle redirection, new experience, new feeling, new repetition, and the reliable gift of sleep across every culture and every era of human history. Sleep has been honored as something more than rest. In ancient Mesopotamia, in classical Greece, in indigenous traditions from the Americas to Australia, sleep and the dreaming mind were understood to carry wisdom, not despite their mystery, but because of it. The subconscious mind, in its nightly depth, touches something that the waking mind, caught in its necessary daily tasks, rarely has time to reach. What waits in the quiet beneath is not something to be wary of. It is resource. Every night you sleep, you are participating in a process that has been unfolding in living organisms for hundreds of millions of years. Sleep predates the human brain. It predates language, culture, and consciousness as we know it. The earliest nervous systems evolved a version of sleep before there were eyes to close or dreams to have. What you are doing right now, surrendering to rest, allowing the brain its private hours, is the most ancient form of biological intelligence the nervous system has ever developed. You are not doing nothing. You are doing everything. The subconscious mind changes slowly, but changes surely. Every moment of genuine relaxation, every night of real sleep, every consistent return to what you want to become, all of it is cumulative. The brain does not forget its practice. It does not lose the work of a good night's sleep. It carries it forward, fact by fact and night by night, building the neural architecture of a different way of being, gently, patiently, without fanfare. It is always working toward you. The threshold you are approaching right now, the soft edge between awareness and sleep, is not an ending. It is a beginning. Every time you cross it, you hand the work of becoming to a deeper, quieter, more capable part of yourself. That part knows what to do with the day you have lived. It knows which memories to strengthen, which emotions to process, which connections to make, and what to gently release. You can trust it. It has been doing this work for every night of your entire life. You do not need to understand everything your subconscious is doing for it to do it well. The liver does not need you to understand biochemistry to function. The heart does not need your permission to beat. And the sleeping brain does not need your supervision to consolidate, to clear, to integrate, and to grow. What it needs is the one thing you are already providing: your willingness to rest. That willingness is enough. The science we have explored tonight converges on a single, quiet truth: the mind beneath the mind, the vast, ancient, pattern-weaving intelligence that runs most of your life, is not separate from you. It is you, in your deepest form, and the most profound act of care you can offer. It is not technique or effort or discipline. It is this: what you are doing right now, lying still, breathing slowly, allowing the night its work. You are already reprogramming your subconscious mind. Right now, in this moment of rest, the brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Theta waves are beginning to roll through the hippocampus. Sharp wave ripples are carrying the day's experience to the cortex. Glymphatic fluid is moving through channels that widen as you relax. New connections are being made, old ones softened. The story of you quietly rewritten by a hand more patient and more wise than the conscious mind alone could ever be. Sleep is not a gap in your life. Sleep is one of the most meaningful things that happens in it. And so, our quiet journey through the science of the subconscious mind comes to a gentle close. We have traveled from the hidden machinery of the hippocampus, replaying today's moments in patterns of electricity too small to feel, to the extraordinary glymphatic currents washing through your sleeping brain tonight, carrying away what the day left behind. We discovered that the subconscious is not a mystery to be unlocked by force, but a living system to be patiently, consistently worked with, through attention, through feeling, through repetition, and through the irreplaceable gift of sleep. From the theta waves that carry memory into permanence, to the slow oscillations that coordinate the brain's nightly symphony, to the simple, ancient wisdom of closing your eyes and allowing the dark, we have glimpsed how complex the science of becoming truly is, and how gentle it can be. when we stop resisting it. The subconscious mind reminds us that most of what makes us who we are is invisible, shaped in the depths, out of reach of our daily review. Much of the most meaningful growth in a human life happens in silence, in the dark behind closed eyes, in the hours the world considers simply absent. Sleep reveals, with quiet insistence, that effort is not always the deepest form of work. That surrender, practiced in trust, is its own intelligence. Without sleep, nothing lasts. By pausing to honor it, we cooperate with the most ancient wisdom the nervous system has ever held. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can, as deep as possible. Think about unity, of every thought, every neuron, every quiet oscillation moving through the brain at this moment. You are not separate from this process. You are not watching it from outside. You are the process itself, the awareness and the neural architecture giving rise to it. Indistinguishable, complete. Think about consciousness itself. Yours, mine, everyone listening tonight. All awareness, perhaps more connected in its depths than any of us can fully know. Let your entire being dissolve into the ocean of consciousness, into dreamless rest, into the space before thought. Prepare for deep sleep. No boundaries left, only peace. If this thoughtful exploration of the subconscious mind helped you relax or drift towards sleep tonight, a gentle like and subscribe helps other sleepless souls find their way here too. Share it softly with someone who might need a quieter night. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. But there is no need to do anything now. Nothing at all. You have traveled far tonight. Not across miles, but inward, through the layered architecture of your own mind. You can allow these thoughts of neurons and sleep and the quiet intelligence beneath awareness to fade now, like the last ripple moving outward from a stone dropped in still water, leaving only the calm surface behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if a gentle, patient gravity has found you here. Not the weight of the day, but the comfortable weight of being completely held, completely at rest. If sleep comes, let it carry you the way consolidation carries memory. Not with force, not with rushing, but with quiet, inevitable rightness, into a realm where time and weight no longer matter. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you, ready to continue the journey. But if they're closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and warm. Tomorrow, the neurons will still be here. The glymphatic rivers will have run their course. The patterns you are building, night by night, will still be growing. Patient, faithful, accumulating into something new. But tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, sleepy soul, and remember, every night you sleep, you are becoming, gently, more yourself. Good night.